Hey guys, it's Saturday1 again here, back again for another new video for you guys, and today I'm here with the debut of a new video series that I'm really excited about called Odds and Ends. Odds and Ends is a video series will take a closer look at the obscure and unique within gaming. There was one thing I was really passionate about when I started my YouTube channel over 4+ years ago now, and that is covering obscure things within gaming. I feel like there are a lot of things out there that just were really interesting to me and just people just never covered or just didn't give it the justice it deserved, and that's what this series is all about. Part of me is I never want to see some of these really interesting things just fall into the depths of obscurity and be forgotten within gaming. So without further ado, let's jump into the debut episode of Odds and Ends. On today's debut episode of Odds and Ends, we will be taking a look at a very interesting Japan-only handheld, and that is Bandai's Wonderswan color. So let's jump into the debut episode of Odds and Ends. The Bandai Wonderswan color was released in late 2000 in Japan, with the original model being released a year before and the crystal 2 years after. That is one thing to note is that there are 3 variations of the Bandai Wonderswan release. There is the original monochromatic Wonderswan, the Wonderswan color, and the Wonderswan crystal. Each model offered its own respective library of games. The Wonderswan was developed by the iconic Gunpei Yokoi and his company Koto along with Bandai. Gunpei Yokoi is better known for his work with Nintendo and creating the iconic Game Boy and Game & Watch systems, Rob the Robot, and everyone's favorite, the Virtual Boy. Not to mention he also invented the modern day D-pad, which will become a staple within gaming. With regards to the Wonderswan color's technical specs, it measures in at about 5 inches wide and is extremely lightweight. It features a diagonal 2.9-inch display which could display 241 colors out of a color palette of 4096. This board is 16-bit 3MHz NEC CPU and a mind-numbing 512 kilobytes of RAM. The visuals of the games themselves were comparable to something in between a Game Boy Color and a Game Boy Advance. The system itself ran off of one AA battery, which lasted for a very long time, providing dozens of hours of gameplay off of one battery. The Wonderswan features 8 buttons on the left side in 2 diamond formations, and 2 buttons on the right side along with a sound, start, and power button in the middle. A contrast dial can be found on the left side, and an extension port for add-ons can be found on the right side. The Wonderswan color is also backwards compatible with original Wonderswan games. When the handheld was released in Japan, it retailed for 6,800 yen and sold over 1 million units. Now, what made the Wonderswan so special, and what resulted in its downfall into gaming obscurity? First, let's take a look at why the Wonderswan was so special. One of the most standout features of the Wonderswan was its very innovative design. The design and multi-button layout of the Wonderswan allowed for it to be played in both horizontal and vertical positions. This is similar to the Atari Lynx, but unlike the Lynx, which only had a handful of vertical games, which were also very cumbersome to play because of the button layout, the Wonderswan had many games which utilized the vertical layout, and because of the Wonderswan's well-placed button layout, were very easy to play. This at the time really offered developers more room for experimentation. This feature really was ahead of its time, and honestly paved the way for handhelds like the DS, which used many unique game layouts as well. Another big factor was Bandai's incredible support from huge third-party developers, including the juggernaut like Squaresoft, among others like Namco, Capcom, and Taito. Many Final Fantasy games and even Squaresoft Wonderswan exclusives like Wildcard and Blue Wing Blitz were released on the system. Companies like Banpresto and Bandai themselves added tons of support with anime licensing, and as a result many anime-based games were released on the platform. This includes a handful of exclusive Digimon and Gundam titles, and to compete with the Game Boy's killer app of Tetris, Gunpei Yokoi even developed a puzzle game for the platform named in his honor, simply titled Gunpei. The Wonderswan also sported many add-ons as well. An add-on called the Wondergate allowed for email and web browsing on the device. This is something that will become standard for more modern handhelds. A development kit called the Wonder Witch was even released and could be acquired by mail order. Essentially, this was a very early sign of officially encouraging homebrew game development. There were even programming contests organized, and some of the winning games were published and sold to the public, and are actually among the rarest games on the platform now, such as Judgment Silver Sword, Rebirth Edition, and Dicing Knight. So what exactly went wrong for Bandai's Wonderswan? It seemed like it had so much going for it. Well, there are a multitude of factors to take into account, and these factors resulted in the handheld slip into gaming obscurity. Despite the Wonderswan handhelds themselves initially being priced very inexpensively, costing much less than its big name competitors, the games themselves for the handheld were very expensive, costing around $30 to $40, which is almost as much as the system itself. Also, despite having incredible third-party support, many of the bigger titles released for the Wonderswan were were eventually ported to various other systems, taking away some of that allure of exclusivity. Also, compared to other competitors out there at the time like the Game Boy Color and even the Neo Geo Pocket Color, which had screens that were fairly easy to see, the Wonderswan screen is very hard to see unless you have perfect lighting, and ghosting is much more noticeable, but the contrast adjustment did certainly help. But the final proverbial nail in the coffin was when Nintendo announced the release of the Game Boy Advance. Despite the Wonderswan handhelds combining to sell roughly 3.5 million units across all iterations and capturing a nice chunk of the handheld market in Japan, it can never recover after the release of the GBA. This led it to be discontinued in 2003 by Bandai. The Wonderswan would go down as an obscure piece of gaming and a forgotten competitor that, despite the low sales, was able to briefly compete with the juggernaut that was Nintendo. It is a handheld within a short lifespan that provided many unique advancements for handheld gaming, some of which would become staples in modern day handhelds. The Wonderswan will also go down as one of the last offerings from one of the most prolific game developers of all time, Mr. Gunpei Yokoi, who tragically passed away in a terrible accident in 1997 before he could see the fruits of his labor with the Wonderswan. So what does this all mean now, and is it even worth owning a Bandai Wonderswan Color? Well, that depends on how you look at things. A Wonderswan Color itself is usually fairly affordable, although as time has passed it seems like less and less surface online, and like most handhelds, certain colors and variations are harder to find than others. Additionally, the Wonderswan Color isn't the most import-friendly handheld out there. A lot of the games are obviously in Japanese, and a lot of the games are very text-heavy games like RPGs and visual novels. But that being said, there's still a sizable library of import-friendly games to be had, and well, for those like myself who are really interested in collecting obscure gaming items and obscure games, this is definitely a system to have, and well, it's also a really interesting piece of gaming history. As always guys, thank you for watching this episode of Odds and Ends, and until the next Odds and Ends, I will see you guys later. Bye guys.